Monsieur Wave.
Yo, apply. Yo, luta do dede. Luta mo nulo jël moto nga andil ma xaalis. Hello?
Bësal mu fay.
Aussi servir Tirade.
What?
Bësal mu fine.
Oh, yes!
Wave acts in Gambia. Deposit and withdraw money, pay bills, and buy mobile credit without fees. Transfer money wherever in the country for only 1% fee. At Wave, Bësal mu fine. Wave, your money is yours.
Jar Oil. The company have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.
I heard a very disgusting audio from someone who is said to reside in Banjul and is against the PPP candidate in the recently held by-election. The lady was spewing some ignorant tribal insults at Fullers. And as usual, every time the topic of tribalism arises, some woke ones among us are quick to remind us of the Samora Marshall quote that the tribes must die for the nation to live. Something about that quote makes me uneasy because I think many people misconstrue the meaning of it. I hold Samora in the highest of regards, as I do anyone who takes up arms for their freedom and the freedom of their people. Unfortunately, some seem to be taking his quote out of context, as if tribes are the problem, rather than the opportunistic politicians Africa is littered with. Associating oneself with a tribe raises eyebrows, as if it is a crime to claim to belong to a group or tribe, because conflict is somehow always associated with tribes in Africa. But a closer examination of most conflicts that are deemed tribal in nature reveals underlying tensions that usually don't have much, if anything, to do with tribe. These are resource wars trapped along tribal lines created by politicians and elites. The tribe must not die for the various colonial spaces to rise. The politicians that tribalize politics and politicize tribes must be the ones to die for the states to live. Europe is mostly divided along tribal lines, and they are not speaking of killing off the Scottish, Irish, or Welsh for the UK to rise. Scandinavia is not talking about killing off Norwegians or Swedish tribes for Scandinavia to rise. It is mostly the African who thinks that someone identifying themselves as Papel somehow takes away from them identifying as Gambian. To you listening, what makes you any more of a Gambian than you are Manswanka, Mandinka, Wolof, Jola, Fula, or Manjago? There is nothing wrong with identifying oneself to be of a particular group, so long as such a group is not out to destroy another based on autochthonous notions or other misplaced notions of superiority. Human beings by nature gravitate towards the familiar. At our core, we are tribal. That we tend to be visceral in times of crisis has more to do with our unmet desires than the need to attach ourselves to our kind. The point is that people gravitate toward what is familiar. We seek comfort in our kind because we feel they can relate to us the most, even if that is not always the case. When you are elsewhere in another country and you see another Gambian, you tend to connect with them because there is some familiarity, even if some Gambians seldom help other Gambians. If people can gravitate towards another because they see familiarity in one another, I see no issue with someone gravitating towards another because they share the same last name, origin, tribe, or language. It doesn't mean one should only gravitate towards the familiar. It is very important to recognize that, as with any conflict, tribal conflict does not happen in a vacuum. There are always underlying socio-economic and political reasons that bubble right beneath the surface. Politicians or organizations tribalize politics for their benefit. The suffering of Gambians knows no tribe. Diseases know no tribe. The terrible conditions in the hospitals know no tribe. senior government officials don't have to deal with those terrible situations. They can go to Dakar or India for treatment. Your suffering in the Gambia is not because you are dominated by some tribe. It is because you are controlled and dominated by a few people who call themselves a government and claim to be serving you, while somehow they live a far better life than you. There is a reason many of us angle for government jobs, and those in government positions will do anything and say anything to continue being in government. Nothing is sweeter. It is your politicians who manipulate a section of the population into some siege mentality and tell them that it is us against them. Yaya Jammeh artfully fed many of his minions with this nonsense, and you can see his handiwork still at play. Cue the split within his APRC. The opportunists went one way and the tribalists went another. So instead of focusing on tribalism as the problem and killing of our tribes, the focus should be on embracing our differences and promoting our oneness as a people trapped in a colonial space we call Gambia, consisting of different tribes. If you want to kill anything for your various colonial spaces to rise, go and face your politicians who pee on you while claiming that it is raining. And to be protected from others, you must align with a certain tribe. That is not true. But whatever you do, the tribes that I claim to belong to will never die for any colonial space to rise. Go after your politicians, not the ethnic groups or tribes.
Excellent jam si Wave.
Yo, apply. Yo, luta do de dik. Luta mënuloo jël moto nga andil ma xaalis. Hello? Ano lay waxal?
Bisul mu fine.
Aussi servir Tirade.
What?
Bisul mu fine.
Oh, yes!
Wave Gambia. Deposit and withdraw money, pay bills and buy mobile credit without fees. Transfer money wherever in the country for only 1% fee. At Wave, Basel Mufine, Wave, your money is yours.
Jar Oil, the company, have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.